Yes, I am ready to get started.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for logging on and attending this evening's event. My name is Matt Schumann. I am on the programming team here at Kennealy Library. Before we begin, just a few notes. Like I said, please be sure to mute yourselves. You're unmuted again. Second. I'm just going to mute you again, not Bob. Should probably spotlight myself as well. Right, before we begin, just a few notes. Please let me know if there are any technical issues that I can try to resolve. You can send those to me in the chat. You can also send questions and comments to me in the chat, and I will send them to Trisha. This program is made possible by the generous donors to the Kennealy Library Foundation. I'd like to now introduce Chef Trisha Pérez Kennealy. She is the owner of the Inn at Hastings Park and has been a big part of our cooking series this year. She will be back on January 8th to show you how to make some winter soups, so be sure to sign up for that event. So now, please welcome Trisha.
Hi, everyone. For those of you that are celebrating Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah. As you could see here on our counter, we have our menorahs ready to light when we sit down for dinner tonight. I am delighted to be giving a presentation about holidays around the world. Here in our house, as an interfaith household, we celebrate an interfaith household with people from Puerto Rico, Irish ancestry. We celebrate a lot. So tonight what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be demonstrating some of our holiday favorites. In the oven right now, we have a standing rib roast, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We have some sufganiyot, which are Israeli jelly donuts. So we have those in various stages. I'm going to talk a little bit about a very traditional Christmas drink called coquito, which you might be able to tell from the name, comes from coconut. And then what I'm doing right now is I'm just getting a few things ready for to make arroz con gandules, which is rice and pigeon peas, which is a very popular dish in Puerto Rico. What I'm doing right now, what I have right here on my cutting board is fresh cilantro and oregano. Every culinary tradition sort of has some flavors that are, included in almost every dish. Cilantro is one of those. We also use something called Cubanelle peppers. Here in the United States, you sometimes hear them referred to as Italian peppers. They're long green peppers, and I've sort of gone ahead and done a lot of our chopping so that we can move right along here with our arroz con gandules. So already on my stove, I have in the pan, I have some olive oil and some cooking ham. Of course, if you wanted to make this in a vegetarian style, you wouldn't need to add the ham. You could do it without. A little bit of that orange coloring is coming from something called anato. A lot of the rices that we eat in Puerto Rico have a little bit of that yellow color, and it comes from a combination of the anato and tomato sauce. So over here on my board, I have onion and the Cubanelle pepper. You'll see the Cubanelle pepper when I pour it out. I have some really finely diced garlic. I have 1.5 cups of long grain rice. You can see that longer grain. And then I have my water measured out. I also have a can of tomato sauce, and I have the oregano and the cilantro that I've already chopped. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to add the pepper, the green Cubanelle pepper, and you can see that green color. So this is different than a bell pepper. It has it's a milder taste is kind of the way I would describe it. A lot of people don't eat green peppers because it sort of gives them indigestion. These are a little bit more of a milder flavor. And what I'm going to do is I've stirred up, I'm going to let those sweat for a little bit. So what I'm looking for is the Cubanelle pepper and the onion to become softer, and I'm also looking for it to become translucent. While that is happening, we're going to leave that for a little bit. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to walk you through. We're not going to start it yet, but I'm going to walk you through sort of what's happening with the donuts. Can you go get, there's another spinning red roast outside. Could you crack it for me? All right, so over here I have my ingredients for our donuts all measured out. And what I want to do is I'm going to take some warm tap water. I have a mason jar ready right here. Because I need to activate my yeast. So in my mixing bowl, I already have a tablespoon of flour, a tablespoon of sugar, and I'm going to add warm water. And I'm looking, and I also already have the yeast. I have 2¼ teaspoons of yeast in the bowl. And I'm looking for the water to be between 100 and 110 degrees. And for most of us, we can do that with tap water. So I have an instant read thermometer here. It's telling me that this is at about 114 degrees. So I'm actually going to give it a second to come on down. I've already pre-measured. This is vanilla, egg, orange juice, and a little bit of salt. This container here has flour and sugar. I'm going to be adding in 2 additions. And then I also have some milk that I'm going to warm slightly by putting in the microwave for just a minute. So I'm looking for the temperature to come down. I'm stirring it up, and it'll probably come down in a few minutes. And then I'm going to add the water to the mixing bowl, and I'm going to allow that to sit for about 5 minutes so that the yeast gets active. What happens is you'll begin to see foam over, like you'll begin to see that foaming action, and that means that your yeast is activating. It's really important. I actually store my yeast in the freezer. It extends the life of it. Because sometimes if the yeast is left for too long, it'll become inactive. I know that at the beginning of the whole pandemic, it was really difficult to find the yeast. So I know that a lot of people have sort of been hurting a little bit. So if you have some extra yeast, this is a great recipe. The jelly donut recipe is a really good one to use. All right, I'm going to give that another minute. And while that's coming down to temperature, I'm going to talk a little bit about the drink that I have over here, which is called coquito. And some people refer to coquito as Puerto Rican eggnog. This particular version does not have egg in it, but some recipes do. I just think that it's a lot easier to use these ingredients. So it's interesting because being from a tropical island, a lot of our desserts are based on using some things that you can find in canned form, because obviously it's really warm and using a lot of dairy isn't always so, it's not always so easy. So I'm using coconut milk, which is very different from the coconut cream. The coconut cream has the coconut solids, and then it has the liquid, and this is sweetened. This is an unsweetened product that is much thinner. Then I have evaporated milk and sweetened condensed milk. And what I do is I blend all of these in a blender for about 5 minutes. The coconut solids from the coquito are going to be very thick. So you really do want to beat this on a high speed in your blender. I also added 2 tablespoons of vanilla, which is a little bit more generous than the recipe had calls for. And then I also added 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. I pour that all into this jar. It's been in the refrigerator for about 2 hours. And also in here, I have a vanilla bean and I have cinnamon sticks. And when I serve this, what I'm going to do is, if I'm serving it to adults, it'll have 1 part white rum, and then it'll have 3 parts of the coquito. The coquito is very, very rich. So I would err on the side of, a smaller cup. Really, really nice and cold. It's fantastic with the rum, but it's also really good without it. And actually, my daughter Gabriella said that she also, when we were making it today, the warmth from the blender, it actually makes it a little bit warm. And she said it actually tasted really good warm as well. So maybe we figured out something new for our coquito today. So this is something that would be served in Puerto Rico. We have a tradition called going on a parranda. It's our version of Christmas caroling, but it often happens in the middle of the night. And when people arrive at your house, even if it's midnight, 2 in the morning, You have to open the door and be ready to feed them. One of the dishes that they might be fed is actually, this arroz con gandules dish that I'm working on. So what I'm trying to do, I want to make sure that I'm scraping up the bits on the bottom, the caramelization of the ham, the pepper, the onion. And those onions are probably still a little more firm than I like them to be. And I'm going to come back over to my water.
Mom.
Yep.
Will you be sending out the recipes? Oh, yeah.
The recipes were sent out. The recipes were sent out by the library. They should have been sent out this morning.
And we'll send them out again in the recap. Sorry, I just was typing that in the chat.
All right, so I'm adding 2 tablespoons of water here, and I'm just going to stir that up. And we're going to let that sit for another 5 minutes, and we'll come back, and then we'll begin. We can continue with that. All right. So in the oven right now, I have a beautiful standing rib roast. I have another one that's fully wrapped right here. These were purchased at McKinnon's in Somerville. You have to call ahead and ask them to cut this for you. A rib roast can have anywhere between 2 and 7 ribs. A good rule of thumb is 2 ribs for about 3 or 4 people. This probably could serve, 6 people if you have a lot of other things, which usually at a Christmas dinner you do. At McKinnon's, they often, and it appears that they did it today, they cut the roast off the bones and then tie it back up. What I did is I actually left the roast that's in the oven. I left it out on the counter for about 2.5 hours. And even at that, it still was colder than I would have liked before putting it in the oven. Room temperature is about 68 degrees, and ideally your roast would be at 68 degrees before you put it into the oven. Before I put it into the oven, I generously salted with coarse kosher salt. I also freshly ground pepper on it and sort of crusted it. I didn't add any oil or anything like that because the fat cap, this part of the roast really adds a lot of flavor to it. And you can see there's even a fat, like a layer of fat that's running all through the roast. And that's basically going to continue to baste and keep the roast nice and juicy as it cooks. I have a remote thermometer that I'm using. It's currently at 109 degrees. I am going to take this roast out of the oven because we like our meat rare around 115. I gave you some rules of thumb on the recipe. So the way this recipe works is that you want to start off your oven. You want to start off your oven at 500. And you really do need to make sure that your oven is clean, because if there's anything that's been caked on your oven and you're baking at 500, you're going to end up with smoke in your house if you haven't cleaned out your oven. So we put the roast in the oven at that 500 degree mark, and we left it at that high temperature for about 15 minutes. At that point, I cut the heat to 350 degrees. And the rule of thumb, it's usually about, 11 to 12 minutes per pound if you want it on the rare side, 13 to 15 minutes a pound if you want it on the, more on the medium side. Now, what's incredibly important, this is an expensive piece of meat. So you really want to make sure that you know what you're doing when you're cooking it. It's actually very straightforward to do it, but you would not wait till like 130, which is like a medium, which is on the rare side. You wouldn't wait until the roast reaches 130 in the oven. What you need to do is you actually need to take it out when it's around 115 if you want it on the rare side, 120 if you want it on the medium rare side, and then you're going to cover it in aluminum foil and you are going to let that roast sit for about 20 minutes. And we're probably about 3 or 4 minutes away from doing that with the roast that we have in the oven. So over here, I am going to add my garlic. Going back to my arroz con gandules. Getting back to that roast. So basically you need to do, a math equation to sort of work back, figuring out what time you want that roast to be ready and kind of working yourself back to be able to get there. I'm gonna let the garlic, you want it basically to become fragrant. And now I'm adding my cilantro and the oregano, same thing, about 30 seconds. Because basically I'm looking for that heat to release, to release some of those flavors. That smells really good. That smells like my grandmother's house. All right. So I've put that in for about 30 seconds. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to add the rice. And I'm going to saute it for a little bit. For about a minute. Wherever there is rice in the world, there's different traditions about how people cook it. And in Puerto Rico, this sofrito is the mixture of stuff that we're using beforehand, but the act of sort of sauteing the rice with all the vegetables with a little bit of meat. I'm sofriendo, it's like we have a saying, sofriendo y comiendo, like I'm stirring, I'm mixing, I'm getting ready, and I'm eating at the same time. And again, too, like I talk a lot about, you gotta have to listen a little bit to your food. I can hear a little bit of that sizzle. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna grab my gandules. So I'm using, when I'm cooking Puerto Rican food, I tend to use Goya products. I know that there was a lot of controversy this summer about the Goya Corporation, but I do have to say, like, these are the products that we were brought up on. What I'm going to do too is I'm pouring out the tomato sauce, and I'm actually using a little bit of that liquid from the pigeon pea can to make sure that I'm getting all of that tomato sauce in. Okay, I'm going to stir that all up. I'm going to add some capers. And the recipe does call for olives. We're kind of a divided household in terms of who likes olives and who doesn't. So I'm just going to add like 3 or 4. And these are the ones that are stuffed. I could have also sort of chopped these up with the capers, but I actually kind of like the taste of the whole olives, and knowing that I have some non-olive eaters in the crew, it makes it a little easier for them to avoid eating those. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, I've measured out 1.5 cups of water. I just wanted it to be ready to go, and I'm adding it. And I'm going to bring that to a boil on a medium-high heat. I'm going to stir it gently, because I don't want to the beans are a little bit, they're a little bit on the softer side, because they're of the canned variety. And I'm going to leave that for about 10 minutes uncovered. When we cook white rice in Puerto Rico, we cover it, but because there's so many other things in this particular rice, we're going to leave it uncovered for a little bit, and then we'll finish it off by covering the rice. So,
Trisha, there was a question.
Yeah.
Would you use broth instead of water?
Excuse me, you could use broth. You could use broth instead of water if you wanted to. You could use a chicken broth, or you can make, a lot of cooks in Puerto Rico will use like chicken cubes. They're called cubitos, like cubitos means little cubes. They would use cubito de bollo, which is, the chicken cubes to make it. And you certainly could do that. Some people would even use, in Puerto Rico, they have ones that are ham-based. So some people might use that because one of the traditional meals that would probably be eaten with this dish is called pernil, which is a roasted, a really yummy roasted pork dish. The pork is marinated overnight in garlic, oregano, olive oil, all these great seasonings, and then it's cooked slowly. It's usually a pork butt, and that's a very traditional meal. You would probably see pernil with arroz con gandules. So we're going to come back over here to the our sufganiyot making station. Yeah, and I can see that there's a little bit of bubble in there. Can you see it? See those bubbles? You can see if you look on the left-hand side of your screen, you might see some bubble action. So I know now that this is active. What I'm going to do is I am going to add my flour. This is flour. This is sugar. I'm going to add the orange and vanilla mixture with the egg. There's egg yolk in here, as well as one whole egg, and this is all sort of measured out. So for those of you who are not familiar with Hanukkah, the celebration, to commemorate the celebration, the miracle of oil, we eat a lot of foods during Hanukkah. Most people in the United States are familiar with latkes. We eat a lot of foods that are cooked in oil. And in Israel, they make these amazing donuts called sufganiyot. And that is what I am making today. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to attach the dough attachment to my mixer. And this is certainly one of those things, people always ask me about different pieces of equipment that I own. A KitchenAid is worth the investment. The KitchenAid that we had originally, I've had one KitchenAid now for close to 23 years. That one is now at our, we're really lucky to have a beach house, and that one's now at the beach house getting a lot of use. But they're indestructible. As a matter of fact, I was making pizza dough a few weeks ago, and this is a lot, like you really do kind of have to pay attention to some of these doughs because the force is pretty heavy, and then the KitchenAid fell off the counter. It literally fell off the counter because it was so strong. So I also have measured out here, I have some pieces of butter. That's 6 tablespoons of butter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add them a piece at a time. And as soon as I begin to see it get blended, I'm adding in another one. And I'm not overly concerned if it's not getting totally blended because adding the additional flour will blend it up. Now I'm going to gradually reduce the speed, and I'm going to add in the flour. And what you're going to begin to see what's going to begin to happen is the dough is going to pull away from the sides. I'm just reducing the speed a little bit. so that it incorporates some of that flour. Oh, that's great. I'm going to push this all the way back onto the counter. And we're going to leave that. And it's going to knead for about 5 minutes. And I'll keep my eye on it so we don't have another episode of it coming off the counter. I've just taken out our standing rib roast. Just to repeat, I started this off at 500 degrees in the oven. When I put it in the oven, it was at 47 degrees. I would have preferred for it to be at 68, but given how cold it was today, I had it up for, close to 3 hours, and it was still, much cooler than I would have wanted. So I knew that I needed to cook it longer than I might have normally. So what we did is I actually extended that beginning time, that beginning high temperature period to about 20 minutes. And then I reduced the heat to 350, and I cooked it until I took it out, and it was about 1:15 when I took it out. Now it's at 1:20, and ideally it's going to be around 1:30, 1:32 when I serve it. But as you can see, it's still kind of going up. What I'm going to do to help accelerate that is I'm actually going to put aluminum foil over it to keep it cooking. So you never want to serve a piece of protein, like a steak. Look at that. Look at it. Directly out of the oven. You always need to let it rest. So that is what I'm doing. But I'm also keeping an eye on it. At that temperature. With my remote, it'll continue to get hot. So I have my rice going here. We have a nice boil going. I'm going to keep that going for about another 4 minutes, because really I want a lot of that liquid to evaporate. Hopefully by that time we hit that 4 minute mark, we're going to be able to see the rice. We're going to begin to see the rice on the top of it. All right, so I've got my dough going. The dough that we're mixing so that you can see that. But I knew that we wouldn't have enough time to rest the dough. So this afternoon, I actually made dough. I let it, I proofed it in the oven. I have a proofer, my oven proofs. You could also put it on the top of your stove. Some people like to put it on top of their dryer, because that tends to be, especially if you're doing laundry, it tends to be a warm area in the house. And I left it for an hour, then I punched down the dough, and then I cut it I rolled out the dough using this mat as my guide, and then I actually just used this. I figured that not everyone has round cookie cutters, so this is what I used, and I would go into the dough, and I would twist. Now, the important thing about the twisting is the twisting helps to kind of seal the dough. It twists the edges of the dough, so it kind of helps to seal it up. So what we're going to do is we are going to deep fry these. And I know that deep frying is something that people sometimes are a little scared of doing. It's very important that you understand the process. This is not where you want to skimp on oil, because if you don't have enough oil, you're going to create more of a problem, and whatever it is that you're frying is going to leak. Like, it actually will act like a leech if there isn't enough oil, and it'll basically suck all the oil in and really won't achieve the desired effect. So what I've done is I've taken my big soup pot, stock pot, and I used an entire container of vegetable oil. I've already used this vegetable oil multiple times. I used it to make latkes over the weekend. I already have made a batch of Sistani oats. I strained it every time, and then I have gone ahead to reuse it. So what I'm going to do here is I also want to make sure that I'm kind of ready to go, and I have the pieces of equipment that I need. So I'm looking here, and I realized one thing that I didn't bring out is I didn't bring out a wire rack and a cookie sheet. So I'm just going to go grab that really quickly. And I'm going to have Gabriella just show you, you're beginning to see the grains of rice in there. Smells good. All right, I can see that a lot of the liquid is evaporated, so what I'm going to do is I am going to cut the heat to low, and I'm going to cover that. And then I'm going to show you what my dough looks like. I have a bowl ready to go. I have some cooking spray. So I'm just coating that. Oh. So as you can see, this dough, it's really soft and it bounces back when I put my finger in it. It has a nice sheen to it. I'm making it into a little ball. I'm going to put it in the bowl. And then I am going to cover it with a clean dishcloth. And I'm going to put it in my oven, which has the proof function. And that'll stay in there for about an hour, and then it will double up. And then what I do, once it's doubled, you roll it out again, you cut out the circles, and then you put it back so that it rises again. Now I'm going to check to see if our oil is ready to go, because what we're looking for is a 350-degree temperature for us to go. I've also put a timer on my rice. It's right there. And I'm going to use my instant read thermometer to see where we are. And I'm very carefully stirring this oil around because obviously there could be pockets. And that needs a little bit more time. So while that's happening, I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm going to put that on the cookie sheet. And then I have a wire rack. And these are going to cook really quickly. It'll be a minute aside. And I'm going to grab a spoon. I apologize. I thought in my sprint to get everything clean, I don't need to find my, but we can use this. And I also will use a chopstick. Hey guys, can one of you go get me a set of chopsticks from the other room, wooden chopsticks? Boys?
I got it.
Thank you. All right, what do we got? That's probably gonna be like another 5 minutes. My roast is at 127 degrees, so as you can see, and the surface of this aluminum foil is piping hot, right? So this is just a clear illustration of you need to take those roasts out well before your heat hit that optimum temperature. Does anybody have any questions while we are waiting? So the other thing that I have ready is this is a piping bag, and this piping bag has like a special tip for filling a jelly donut. You also can use a toothpick and make a hole and then, use a piping bag to fill in the jelly. To kind of bring together the best of both worlds and sort of represent my cultural tradition, in Israel, they probably would be using strawberry or raspberry. This is actually guava jelly. Very popular in Puerto Rico, using the guava fruit that grows on the island. It's like a sweet, tangy taste, and I think it's a great filling for the sufganiyot. So that's what I've been using to do our sufganiyot here in our house. So this oil has been heating for about 10 minutes. I'm actually a little surprised that it's taking this long to come to temp. But better to be safe than sorry. Are there any questions while we're waiting for our oil to heat up?
None have come in, but feel free to type any questions in the chat, or you can even unmute yourself and ask directly if you'd like.
So one of the things too that I thought was important about doing this demonstration is that getting ready for the holidays can be incredibly stressful, right? There's, oftentimes, maybe not this year, there are people coming, staying with you at your house. There's a lot of moving pieces. And sometimes these meals can have a lot of moving pieces. So what I always tell people is work back from when you want to sit down for dinner, write down how long each of your recipes take, and be very honest and realistic about how long it takes to prep, like all the chopping, getting everything together. And also too, making sure you leave time to that you're cleaning along the way. So, we've been going since I think we started working at about 4:30 today, because I wanted to make sure that you saw all of the different pieces of what we were doing. And as I said, the other thing that was really important is making sure that that roast was coming to room temperature so that it was really accurate in terms of the time. I had hoped that that roast was going to be out of the oven at 6:45, and then that would have given us that 30-minute rest time for us to be ready to cut into it around 7:15. But we're pretty good in terms of timing right now. So I'm going to check this out.
Oh, a question did come in just now.
Yeah.
Two of them actually. What do you make with leftover roast?
Oh, tons of stuff. I make a very fancy steak and cheese sub. One of my favorite places to have a steak and cheese sub is Pinocchio's in Harvard Square. I like my steak and cheese sub with lettuce, tomatoes, mayos, pickle, and hots. And so what we do is I take the leftover roast, I pulse it in the food processor, and then I fry it in a pan with a little bit of, this is really fancy cooking, people, with American cheese. And then I usually have like slider rolls or, Parker House rolls or something like that left over for dinner. So I make mini steak and cheese sliders for my family. We also really like Brussels sprouts. So another thing that I'll do is I'll make like a Brussels sprout hash. Some people might know, because I talked a little bit when we were talking about Thanksgiving, we had a standing rib roast in our house for Thanksgiving because my kids aren't huge fans of turkey. So I used an ice cream scoop and fried like little mashed potato, like the little balls of mashed potatoes. I cut up the leftover Brussels sprouts and then the steak, and I tossed it all together, and I made a really awesome hash, like a Brussels sprout potato hash. So those are some of the things that I do with roast.
And what vegetable dishes would you serve with the roast?
So as I said, we really like Brussels sprouts. We also often like to have spinach gratin. So that's probably something that will be, I don't think we're doing on Christmas this year. I think we're doing bistecca alla fiorentina. So it's, grilled porterhouse steaks with the Florentine, with the spinach gratin, which we really like. I probably will do baked potatoes with all the fixings. So everyone gets their baked potato and then we load them up with like bacon and very kosher, I know. Cheese, sour cream, chives, butter, a little bit old school. Those old school baked potatoes that I used to love when you went to, there was a particular steakhouse that we used to go to in Puerto Rico and they had the best baked potatoes and they always had all those yummy things. So maybe it's a memory of that. I'm really surprised at how long that oil is taking. But once the oil is heated up, these are going to cook 1 minute per side. Then I have my jelly ready to go to fill them up. So it'll be quick cooking as we're doing it. So what I may do is, I just want to see how long that's been resting. So my roast is now at 132. So I think that what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you what it looks like. I'm going to cut into it so that you could take a peek at what it looks like in the middle. Isn't it convenient that I have it right over the knife drawer? I'm going to move it over there, okay? Cutting away the string. So the other thing too is that, every, different families sort of have different sauces that they like. Some people might like to have like a blue cheese, like a creamy blue cheese sauce with this, or horseradish cream. We tend to serve this with something called chimichurri. It's an Argentinian steak sauce that is really popular in Puerto Rico as well. The Argentinian version is made with parsley, but I like to make it with cilantro. So it's like a vinaigrette. It has olive oil, red wine vinegar, garlic, a little bit of oregano, and the cilantro. And actually, if you look back on the last session that I did for the library, I demonstrated how to make chimichurri.
2 questions came in, if you'd like.
Sure.
I'll ask them in reverse order, just for relevance sake. Why is it called standing rib roast, and how is it different from other roasts?
So, because of the ribs, these are the ribs. So the name comes from it being on the rib, and the reason that it's different, it has to do with the cut of the roast. So here you go. And as I said, this one, I probably, if I was serving this to my family, I would have cut this when it was like at 128. But you can see I'm going right into the middle, right there. You can see that. I'm going to get a plate so we can see it. You can see the red, that really beautiful red.
And the other question is maybe more relevant when you're talking about the jelly donuts again, but what is your favorite holiday dessert?
My favorite holiday dessert? The souffleurs are actually really up there because it's so fun to have something like that and eat it right when it's done. So see, and so in my house, some people don't like the bone, some people like the bone. I think that the meat that's right along the bone is some of the best. This is the other thing, the person who asked about the standing rib roast, if this were sliced, these are ribeyes. These are bone-in ribeyes, which to me is one of the best steaks. I didn't cut it on a cutting board. It would have been a little prettier and cleaner if I had, but you could sort of see, and you can see that marble, the fat is kind of going right through it. And that basically, as I said, it acts to baste the meat. And I'm actually going to Try that little piece. Gabrielle, you want a piece?
Yeah.
Very important to keep my camera woman happy.
Right. Very good.
I'm also helping.
Here comes another person coming to chase. You got the nice peppery part.
Muy delicioso.
Muy delicioso. All right. Let me have a little piece and then it's time to make the donuts. The other thing that I really like at the holidays, I love cookies. I love holiday cookies. When we have a long standing tradition, there's another family that we usually bake with. And we make spritz, which are the cookie, like through the cookie press. We make meringues, we make sesame thumbprints, we make almost candy. And basically we do it together so that we have more varieties. So we usually have like 6 to 8 different types of cookies. We make them the week before Christmas, and then we're able to enjoy those cookies throughout the season. So that's also something else that I really enjoy. All right, so my oil should be where I need it to be. So we can get the dessert ready. And the timing should be just about right for my rice. All right, let's see. What do we think? 360. 360. Let's see. I think it's a little. Maybe about it. All right, here we go. All right. Hey, Roar,
Yes, ma'am.
can you give me, because my phone's being used, can you give me a minute timer?
Yeah, it's an heavy mine, I can do it.
And you set a timer for 1 minute.
And you can see how quickly they begin to get brown. And it, the oil did splatter. If you feel more comfortable, you also could use like I'll show you guys how to use a slotted spoon.
How was that for the donuts? Was it?
No. Is that my donut?
No.
Yeah.
Oopie.
So good.
I turned it too soon.
10, 9.
And I do try to kind of keep track of where I put them. When I put things in oil, I try to do it in a clockwise manner.
That's good.
All right, so let's see. Yes. It's time to make the donuts. Another minute.
There's a question about the dough recipe, if it can be used to make raised glazed donuts.
I haven't tried it. It probably could. The texture of it is actually similar, so it could probably work. Look at those two. And see, like I think that you can see in the camera, like that is not really greasy. You see what I mean? Other than that pocket right there that I want to get more golden, but it's okay, all good. Now, it's also important to recognize that every time you add more things to the oil, the temperature of that oil is going to drop. Yeah.
What are the light spots on the donuts? Someone asked.
It's just that it didn't get golden in that particular place. But these are sort of the things like it's still going to be okay. So, and as you see, as I turn them over, look at that side. So obviously that'll be the orientation of my donut, the smoother side. And actually, you know what it might be? I know exactly what it is. It's the indentation from my finger. That's what it is. That's so funny. So let me be a little more careful with the next round. If you have never had a jelly donut right like within minutes of being cooked, it's pretty awesome. So I would highly encourage you all to give it a whirl. That's exactly what it is. My fingers are not being as gentle as they normally are. Because maybe I also should have put these spread out. The dough is great today. Look how much it poofed up. I probably could have put these, because I'm kind of, you saw that I was kind of pulling them apart. I probably could have spread it out a little bit more. Did you guys want powdered sugar on the top? You want powdered sugar today? Hey, Warman, go get me the powdered sugar, please.
There was some out here.
All right, I'm going to do these, and then these are still a little hot. I'm going to give it 2 minutes, and then we're going to fill one of those.
I have a hot
All
dog.
right, so I'm going to begin to turn over. As you can see, they cook off really fast once you get that oil ready to go. So because I had to make 2 batches of these, some of our friends are going to get little packages tonight with some sufganiyot, little Hanukkah packages of sufganiyot and hot chocolate. So what I had done before we put the jelly in the piping bag is we actually mixed up a little bit with a spoon to kind of thin it out a little bit. And each subsequent batch, it gets a little faster. So I can tell that we're ready. I could tell that a few seconds before that we were ready to go. So I am going to take these all out. And again, I'm kind of paying attention to the order in which I put them on the tray. So I know the order in which I'm going to fill them, which ones are cooler and ready to go.
Someone asked, have you ever made these donuts with gluten-free 1-for-1 flour?
I have not used I haven't. But 1-for-1 is an excellent product. So I would have to imagine that it would work. All right. So I'm going to take I'm going to basically insert it. And I'm going to squeeze. Coming out the side of the donut.
There were a couple of questions that came in. How many times can you reuse the oil, especially like after the donut?
If I'm doing something like things that are neutrally flavored, like the potato and the donut, which aren't very strong, I probably could use it like 3 or 4 times at least. But if I had fried something like fish in here, I would only use it to fry fish again. Does that make sense? So you really you want to make sure, like when we're done tonight, I'm going to let this oil cool off overnight. And then what I'll do is I will put it through a fine, I'll put it through actually a fine sieve like this to filter out any of the debris, any of the loose dough that might be in there. And then I'll store it in the bottle that it came in.
And then I'm just answering these in different order if anyone's noticing, but can you use any jam or jelly in the donuts?
Whatever you like, you can use, anything, any particular one that you like would be fine.
And then someone had a question about the roast, and say if you had a holiday meal that had vegetarians coming as well, what would you serve as a vegetarian alternative?
I would probably do, is that, I have to take it up?
Yes.
There's two things that I've been doing lately. One of them is like a butternut squash pasta with like pepitas, like in a pappardelle pasta. I love butternut squash. I just think that has a fantastic flavor. The other one is there's a really good tofu from Maine. It's called heiwa. And what I do is I drain the tofu. I want to get the powdered sugar. I drain the tofu, and then I actually use my panini press, and I grill the tofu, and then I serve it with an Asian peanut sauce. But again, like I could also serve it if I was serving the roast. I could also serve it like with the chimichurri sauce, right? So I think that one's also, and it's kind of unexpected, really having that beautiful tofu cooked alongside. I'm just gonna grab a spoon.
Oh, this is glorious.
So I probably could have waited a few more seconds because as you can see, some of the jelly is coming out. And I'm just gonna dust these with flour, with powdered sugar.
I love eating flour.
And then I'm gonna turn the camera on my children so that they can enjoy the donuts.
I have stage fright.
All right, so let's see, we're gonna break it open. Should we break it open so that people can see what it looks like in the middle?
Yes.
Oh, jelly.
So there's your jelly donut. That's a loaded jelly donut. So they may not come on camera, but I think that they're gonna go ahead and have sufganiyot as an appetizer for dinner.
I think the gasp was enough. That was perfect.
All right, so that's holidays around the world with the Kennealys. We hope that everyone has a happy Hanukkah. Can you not eat that donut over my computer?
It's next to it.
Next to it. Can you take it back a little bit? All I need is guava jelly in my keyboard. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We hope that you have a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And of course, we hope that 2020 is behind us very, very quickly and that 2021 will be a year of good health for everybody. Does anybody have any questions?
Trisha, this is Deb, and I am just wondering, I joined a little late, so maybe you said this. It's an incredibly hard time, obviously, for restaurants and hospitality.
Yes.
Is the inn doing takeout meals that we can enjoy if we want something really nice but aren't comfortable coming inside?
All right, thanks, Deb. So let me explain what we're doing at the inn, and I really appreciate the question. So the inn is open. We are accepting guests, and we are open. Our restaurant is open, but we recognize that a lot of people aren't necessarily comfortable coming into a restaurant. So we have done a lot of different things to try to make people feel comfortable. So first of all, our menu on a daily basis is on when we're open, which is Wednesday through Sundays, is available for takeout. So lunch and dinner are available for takeout. Our champagne brunch, which is fantastic, which we offer on Saturday and Sundays, is also available for takeout. We have a special Hanukkah menu right now that we'll be doing tomorrow and Thursday night. You can go online, you can place the order right online. Actually, that menu features the raspberry sufganiyot, really beautiful dolmas, which are stuffed grape leaves with cod, a beautiful brisket or salmon, and the sufganiyot or an apple cake is dessert. We're also doing Christmas Eve and Christmas dinner to go. And we also have a very special New Year's menu to go. In addition, like we have designed on our porch, we have tables set up outside on our porch. If people want to eat on the porch, we will serve you on the porch as long as you want to sit out there. We have heaters, we have blankets that are washed after every use. There's 16 seats on the porch. And then the newest thing that we've added is our Igloo Wonderland. So we have set up, if you drive by the inn on the Worthen Road side, you will see we have 4 igloos set up. And those igloos can accommodate, each of them can accommodate up to 6 people. They have a heater, but they have ventilation because they have a door that's open air, and there are also additional flaps inside the igloo if you want to let additional air in. So we're offering lunch in those. They're the 5 days a week that we're open. And then we have a really special tasting dinner that we're offering in the igloos. A lot of people have signed up to have Christmas Eve and Christmas dinner with their families in the igloos. In addition, we're still offering this weekend, we have our frozen tea for our younger guests. Anna and Elsa are coming to visit from Arundel, along with some of their friends. So we have beautiful teas throughout the day. Each of the seatings is limited to 25 people, which is well below the capacity that is required of us by the state. And then we also are offering, Santa's coming one last time. He's been with us the last few Sundays, and he's coming one more time so that he can have physically distanced visits with the kids who are joining us for our brunch offering. So those are all of the different things that we're trying to do at the inn, and we hope that people will support us in any way that you feel comfortable. Please consider coming in if you feel comfortable doing it. Please order takeout. If you know people that enjoy the inn, give them a gift certificate. Anything that you can do to support us really makes a difference because we were closed for 6 months, as most of you know.
Well, if there aren't any more questions, you have a lot of thank yous in the chat. But thank you so much, Trisha, for spending your evening teaching us how to cook these wonderful dishes. I'm looking forward to making jelly donuts soon myself.
Oh, I forgot one thing. The other thing is that I'm also offering cooking classes at the inn. So there's a list of offerings on our website, but we're also introducing new culinary weekends. So if you wanted to come and stay at the inn and you've learned from the lessons that I've been teaching over the course of the last 8 months, you're more than welcome to come and join us at the inn for the weekend. The weekend includes 20 hours of instruction from me, along with some with tours of some of the local farms in the area. It'll include some really fun themes throughout the year. January's is healthy eating. February's is romance. I think March is a tribute to the Emerald Isle. You get the idea. But if you've ever wanted to come and spend the weekend at the inn, here's your opportunity to do it and do something really fun and really take your cooking to the next level. So, again, thank you, everyone. Bon appetit. If you try the recipes, take pictures, send them. And of course, if you're making the recipes and you have any questions, please don't hesitate to be in touch. My email is tpkennealy@inn@Hastings Park, or of course, you can just call the inn and ask for me.